Good evening and welcome to Tzipi Live, my weekly live every Sunday at 8. My name is Tzipi Livne. I'm a registered nurse and certified food addiction counselor. If you're watching this for the first time, then welcome. Every week, I like to bring up a certain subject, and today it is inspired by a talk I heard by Dr. Kim Dennis. I co-chair the first international professional food addiction counselors working group. We are over 100 people who treat food addiction. We are from all around the world, and once a month we meet on Zoom, and many times one of the members of our group will present about different subjects. And this past week was a wonderful subject that we all talk about a lot, which is differentiating between food addiction and eating disorders, because there's a lot in common with them. And also, there are some food addiction professionals say there's no such thing as eating disorders, it's all food addiction. And then there are some eating disorder specialists who say there's no such thing as food addiction, it's all eating disorders, it's different eating disorders. And I am actually very much aligned with Dr. Kim Dennis's opinion that there are some people who have eating disorders and not food addiction, some people who have food addiction and not eating disorders, and some people who have both. And the both is really complicated because the treatment outlook of people with food addiction is different than with people with eating disorders. Eating disorders comes from a more psychological background. And the attitude is, if you will learn to deal better with the reasons why you're going to the food, then you won't need all these, harmful eating habits and binging on all these, bad foods, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas from the food addiction standpoint is that some people, their brain is more sensitive to the addictive nature of certain foods. And then their eating behaviors are addictive like. And then if you first stop eating the foods that are addicting you, then you can actually learn how to deal with all those emotions, which, because your brain is more sensitive, you may want to go to the food when you're having stressful times in your life. So one starts with the psychological and one starts with the biochemical in the brain. And I am definitely on the side of, I treat food addiction. I do not treat eating disorders. I'm not an eating disorder specialist. I am a food addiction specialist. And I know that people who do have food addiction, first, they need a food plan that will help them stop using food like a drug. They need to get off the foods that act on their brain like a drug. And once they do that and their thinking becomes clearer, they can also learn life skills to deal with life instead of that natural tendency to always go back, right? To relapse into the addiction, whether it be food or drugs or whatever. So in our case, it's those hyper-processed, sugary, starchy foods that not everybody who has a glass of wine is an alcoholic, and not everybody who has a piece of cake is a food addict. Even people who maybe had more chocolate than intended or another, it doesn't necessarily mean they're a food addict. There are really very specific criteria and a professional way to assess if somebody is suffering from food addiction or not. Having said that, I really, after I know how, what am I going to say? How much the food industry has really hijacked our food supply, and how processed, hyper-processed foods especially, but even processed foods really are so unhealthy, even much more than people think. So I know that, if you go off sugar, nothing's bad is going to happen to you unless you suffer from a eating disorder that really involves a lot of restricting. And then, yes, then restricting maybe could be harmful, as the eating disorder specialists say. I don't know. I'm not an eating disorder specialist. That they say that, for example, somebody with anorexia really saying to them, this is not allowed and this is not allowed. It's like sort of like feeds into that restricting and starvation, which is totally understandable. That's not a good idea. Or somebody who has the eating disorder called orthorexia, which is like this obsessive around very extreme diets, right? Like carnivore, like going, like somebody who will go from carnivore to like fruitarian to like, extreme veganism or whatever it is, but like goes from one to the other. And it's something that's very obsessive. And with the obsession is around the diet, right? So maybe somebody like that would really not, that abstaining from certain foods is not for them. But somebody who really feels like the way they behave around food is more an addictive type of eating, right? This like loss of control and compulsiveness, and this thing of like needing more and more as time goes on. And sometimes just eating to feel normal, because if I like what happened to me was if I didn't have sugar, I would start feeling irritated and jumpy. So it was like just to feel like I could deal with life, I had to eat copious amounts of sugar when I was like at the height of my addiction. So for people like that, the food affects very severely their mood and their brain, yes, then we don't call it restricting. We call it an abstinent food plan. And this is one of the things that Dr. Kim Dennis, she said that's what she calls it. And I so related to that. I don't call it a diet. It's a food plan. It is how you build the way you're going to eat from day to day and how you look at life and what your relationship with food is. And that's different. That's completely different than restricting. So I understand where people, and here's the problem in my eyes, the food industry loves the idea, right, of objecting to restriction, because it totally serves them that everyone should be able to eat everything in moderation. And the fact that for some people, moderation does not work is not what, what serves them. So they're definitely into that thing of eating everything in moderation. But let's ask ourselves honestly, is the way people are eating today, most people, is that really moderation? Are you eating in moderation? Is your physical health proving to you that you're eating in moderation? Is your relationship with food enabling you to eat everything in moderation and be happy with it and have quality of life? Or are you constantly eating more, not just more than you wanted, but maybe you didn't even want and still are eating more? If you're obsessing around food 24/7 and eating foods that are like, you really feel like it's like a heavy smoker, just it's food and not with nicotine, then that's different than it could be. And here's what I call the sugar paradox, right? What happens is people who are really addicted to food, what they'll tell me is, I know I need to go off sugar, but I just can't imagine life without sweets. I can't imagine life without cake. And what's very interesting is that I had a conversation with somebody not that long ago who quit smoking. And he said that before he quit smoking, he never went to to one of these programs until like his finally went because of his wife or something like that. I don't know, or some friends. But he said he never really thought of going because he just couldn't imagine life without smoking. The fact that his cigarettes were like a part of who he is, a part of his life. So when it comes to food addiction, it's not enough just to abstain. It's not restricting. It's freeing somebody from these foods that react in their brain differently than maybe other people. Not everyone who is overweight is a food addict. I really believe that. And I've treated many food addicts who are at a perfect body weight. That's not the point. It's the question is where these foods, what role do they play in your life? And is it like you want to do things better and you just can't again and again, to the point where it's harming you mentally, physically, emotionally? It's like ruining your life and you still can't stop eating? then that might, it might be addiction. And I can say that it is good to go to a professional and get professionally assessed whether, if somebody is a food addict or not. Having said that, I do want to say, if you would like to try going off sugar or doing a sugar detox, let's say for a month, just to see how you feel, for example, but you just don't know where to begin, I am launching a new mini course, which is a sugar detox starter kit. It basically teaches you how to begin the sugar detox, what you need to do to prepare yourself physically and mentally, and also, how to those first week or two, what to expect. So anybody who is interested, it's going to be at a very reasonable early bird price. This is not an expensive course in any way, but there's going to be an early bird price, which is like a really ridiculous price. So if you're interested in that mini course, please, there will be a link somewhere around here that you can sign up for the VIP waitlist. And as soon as it's getting launched, which should be really any day now, as soon as this course will be launched, you will be immediately notified so that you can take advantage of the early bird discount. And if you are looking for some really intense one-on-one counseling, there will also be a link where you can sign up for a strategy call with me, and we can see if your eating behavior really is addictive or not, and if yes, how I can help you. So I hope you guys are going to have a wonderful evening, a fantastic week, and thank you, Dr. Kim Dennis, for such a wonderful talk that you gave us and gave me so much insight into my work as a professional food addiction counselor. See you guys next week on Sippy Live. Bye bye.